Grounded with John Tester and Maritza Giorgio. We have a really big show for you today. We have someone who I find incredibly intellectually intimidating. like like a lot, okay?
Now you know. Now you know how I feel with all of our guests.
Well, I mean, all of our guests, but this guy, like, if I can even form sentences that are coherent, I will be happy. I'm going to do my best to not sound nervous here, but we have New York Times columnist and three-time Pulitzer Prize winner Tom Friedman coming on our show later today. And I will say, John Tester will be so excited about this. He's not only from Minnesota, but he graduated from the same high school that I graduated from. So we're gonna have a little bit of a love fest. Sorry.
That's okay. And it's all right. So he's the second smartest dude to ever graduate from your high
Oh,
school.
I think he's at the top of the list. But we have
Right?
we'll talk about it. We had the
Where do you where
Cohen
do you
brothers.
where do you fall in that? But
I'm at the bottom. I'm at
no,
the
no,
way
come on,
bottom.
don't give me
Yeah,
that.
I'm at the way. I mean, we had the
So can you
Cohen
tell me
brothers. The
how many
Cohen
kids?
brothers who did Fargo graduated from my high school.
Wow, how many kids graduate in your graduating class?
Oh gosh, maybe 250, 300.
Well, that's
Doesn't too bad.
half the population of Big Sandy, Montana, right there. So
Yeah, there you go, there you go. Okay, so we are going to get to that, conversation with Tom a little bit later this morning, but we wanted to hop on here and do some of our headlines with you over some coffee, before we bring him in. So let's start with it, right? President Trump says he's going to set up a trilateral meeting with Russia, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And Zelensky, of course, and several other European leaders were at the White House yesterday. They met there, and this was a few days after the U.S. literally rolled out red carpet for Putin. That was before a meeting in Alaska. The tone of yesterday's meeting was a big departure from the last time we saw Zelensky in the Oval Office. That's when we saw the president and vice president berate Zelensky. Now, several European leaders who were in this meeting yesterday said there was real progress, and they said there was a sense of unity. Trump has ruled out allowing Ukraine to join NATO, but said he could promise security guarantees from the U.S. There are also unresolved issues here about territory, and if Ukraine is expected to give up land to Russia, which says absolutely it will not. So let's break it down. My big question is, why would anybody trust us if we just say, oh, we'll promise you this security when we have gone back on some of our promises this year?
well, I think that's a fair point. Um, I want to back up a little bit. I appreciate the president bringing everybody together, and I appreciate the European leaders coming with Zelensky because I think that was very smart. So we didn't have the potential of a replay of what happened back in February, which was incredibly repulsive. But that aside, I think getting people together and talking about how to move forward is important. But I want to be clear. Um, Ukraine didn't do anything wrong here. Russia invaded a sovereign country because they could. And Putin knows that the longer he can delay, and by the way, he just got another delay on the tariffs. Congress hasn't enacted even more harsh security sanctions on Russia. So his he just wants to delay because he knows time's on his side. He knows that it's a much bigger country than Ukraine, and he can outlast them. And I think we are aiding and abetting in that delay until the president understands that Vladimir Putin is nothing more than a killing dictator that wants nothing more than reunite the USSR back to its old form. And Lavrov was wearing a USSR shirt at the
Right.
negotiations. Let's just be honest. This is part of his plan to reunite the USSR. And quite honestly, at some point in time, you have to hold him accountable, and you don't hold him accountable by bringing him back into the West. Russia's economy was in trouble. What he got out of that meeting in Alaska, Putin, I'm talking about, was very important for Russia, and I'm sure his popularity numbers went up because of that. But in the end, he invaded a sovereign country because he could, just like he could invade any other sovereign country because he has nuclear weapons. So this clown needs to be held accountable, and we should not be aiding him in his ability to take over another country that wants to be democratic, by the way, that wants to be like the West, wants to have democracy, wants to have freedom, wants people to have their own choice and not have a government tell them what to do and when to do it.
We'll see what comes next. The president is saying President Trump, I should say, is saying that he thinks we will know within a week or 2, but he also said he could solve this in 1 day. So we'll see. We'll
Well,
see what.
solve it in a day, but don't give all the territory back to Russia because they acted inappropriately. So solve it, get it done. I mean, I think everybody wants to see the war end, including Zelensky.
Right.
I'm not sure Putin does, though. He knows that if they keep fighting, it just continues to weaken Ukraine, especially with Ukraine's arms tied behind their back, as we've done to them.
Okay, so, meanwhile, this came up in the meetings with Zelensky. It also apparently came up in the meetings with Putin. Trump announced plans to sign another executive order, this time to stop mail-in ballots and end the use of voting machines before the midterms next year. So apparently, like I said, this was brought up in that meeting with Putin. Trump is saying that mail-in voting is a hoax. I mean, it happens. It's not a hoax. This is something that happens that we do. I'll just say that. We can talk about all the Republicans who have also won in mail-in elections. I could point to the state of Montana in 2020, where pretty much Republicans won by 10 points in every statewide race except for one, and that was like 9.6% or something. But here's the other thing: Trump voted by mail in past elections, and the real big one is that executive orders don't govern elections. That power belongs to the states. Congress can make rules around federal elections. The president cannot. He can pull some levers with like funding and federal funding, but go for it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, look, I can't tell you the last time I voted in person. It was over 20 years ago. We've used mail-in ballots in rural America. It's really important because it's quite a jaunt to get to your polling locations, oftentimes. And then it's November. You don't know what you're doing, and this takes a lot of pressure off. You can vote. You can sit at your kitchen table and visit about it with your significant other if you want. Talk about all sorts of things that are on the ballot, initiatives and other things, as well as the candidates. And so I think this is a little crazy. As far as the voting machines, look, if we want to have paper ballots on everything, that's fine. You just got to figure out how to count them. I was a voting judge, oh shit, 40 some years ago
Oh, I didn't
at our,
know that.
yeah, at our polling place. And so there wasn't many people that voted, probably a few hundred at most. And counting the ballots, they were all counted paper ballots, which was cool. There can be mistakes made there though too, but there were several people doing the same thing, so it minimizes that. But it took some time. I mean, I don't polls closed at 8. I don't think we got out between, I think it was 10 or 11. And we had, like I said, a couple hundred ballots probably, as I recall. And so it takes time. So how are you going to count them? How are you going to do it? But if you want to get rid of voting machines, figure out how you're going to count them. I'm all about it, but make sure there's checks and balances to make sure people aren't cheating.
Yeah, and we should mention the mail-in ballot thing. I mean, it was a huge percentage of the
Yeah.
population that voted mail-in during COVID, and that was part of that whole story that I did that you were involved with, Senator, with the blue collection
Yep.
boxes, as the USPS boxes being
Yep.
removed before that election, and why it was an issue because of so many mail-in ballots. So
Yep.
we'll see
So,
what happens.
so I think it would be a mistake to get rid of mail-in ballots. But I'll tell you also from a pure political standpoint, you get rid of mail-in ballots, I think it helps Democrats. That's a
Oh,
fact. The election in 2020 in Montana showed the less people that vote, well, the better it is for Democrats. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And rural America is where a lot of these ballots are used. And rural America is pretty deep red right now. And I think it'll change, but right now it's pretty deep red. So he may, in fact, be shooting himself in the foot.
okay. So I'm in a text chain with several TV producers, and we are all shocked that this story that we're going to talk about now isn't getting more national play yet. So, a Democratic Texas state representative, her name is Nicole Collier, she spent the night on the state house floor because she was locked in there. Let me back up. House Democrats returned to the Capitol in Texas yesterday. This is after they left the state to try to block a vote on the Republican redistricting plan, right? They left, they went to states like New York and Illinois. We've talked about that. So when they came back yesterday, back home, back to Texas, back to the Capitol. House Speaker Dustin Burrows put some new rules in place around them. He said they could only leave the floor with written permission, and they had to agree to be escorted by law enforcement until Wednesday for 2 days when they reconvene. So if they left the House floor, they had to be escorted out in their private world by law enforcement. Most Democrats actually said, okay, but Collier said no. She refused to accept the terms, so they locked her inside. Here's what she said: "My constituents sent me to Austin to protect their voices and rights. I refuse to sign away my dignity as a duly elected representative just so Republicans can control my movements and monitor me with police escorts." Uh, wow.
So I may have a different perspective than you do on this. I don't
All right,
know.
let's hear it.
Yes, the first thing that came to mind is, in the on the floor of the United States Senate or House, on the floor, if you get locked in, you know, uh, and you're truly locked in the chamber, how do you go to the bathroom? But that aside,
Well,
we'll leave that again.
she can leave she can, like, go to her office with an escort, apparently, like, there's somebody
But you
there, but
said
go ahead.
they locked her in the chamber. That tends to be somewhat
Yeah, they locked her in, but then they said that she can
that
go back
she
and
could
forth
go
to
out.
her office, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But, I mean, this was look, the people of Texas elected a majority of Republicans in the Congress, and they can set the rules. And if they usually rules can be set by a simple majority, at least that's the way it was in Montana. And so consequently, you live with those rules. Those are the way it is. And if you want to change that, change the election. Get out there and get some people elected that come from purple or even red regions. Get good candidates and have them work hard, and things will happen. But I think the more important part here is that they have one of the reasons they have a majority is because they've gerrymandered the districts and they want to do more gerrymandering of the districts. And it's really, really time for Congress to step up and say, whoa, and put some common sense on this because it's not good for democracy.
Okay, I have a really quick question, though. Are there no bathrooms, like, in the cloakrooms on the
Yeah,
Senate floor?
there are off the cloakroom, but I said you didn't say if she was locked into the cloakrooms and the floor. She was locked on the Senate floor or the House floor, whichever floor it was. And there are no bathrooms on the floor,
On
okay?
the floor, right, you have to go into the cloakroom.
That's
I was
right.
in
So
there once.
I'm taking you literally for what you say, as most people did when you were a journalist, okay?
Oh, he's feisty today, folks. Okay.
There was no fake news with Maritza Giorgio, I'll just tell you.
Even though my son loves to call me Fake News Giorgio, that's his nickname for me, just to jab me.
Wow.
Uh, I know, he's brutal.
By
But
the
did
way,
you
did you get a lead on this Draper header that I was looking for? I mean, did
I
you find
was
one?
just about to ask you about that. Some people expressed interest in helping you, and they were going to call some farmer friends and see what they could find.
Yeah, well,
So
this combine is like a 2006, I think. So, somebody asked about what year it is. I just need to have it in really good shape and fit a 2588. It doesn't really matter how old it is. As long as it's in good shape, it can be fixed.
remind us the size of it.
36 foot. Yeah,
36-foot Draper
yeah,
header
yeah.
for
Case
a
IH makes them. McDon makes them. I think they're the same damn header, actually, but we'll go from there. Yeah.
okay,
The
if you have
problem is
any
if you find one, it's in, like, Missouri or some damn place, and you can only tow 'em at, like, 35, 40 miles an hour, so it's
well,
rough.
I'll fly down to Missouri, I'll drive it back for you.
You'll drive it back at 40 miles an hour? That'd be great.
What else do I have to do?
No, exactly.
So now let's get to our conversation with Tom Friedman.
How can I resist doing a podcast with the senator from Montana and a former, colleague student from St. Louis Park High School? Like, what are the odds, okay?
Unbelievable. I was just gonna ask you before we go any further, Maritza brought up something here which she's gonna use as a prop later that said you were the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper in 1971.
I was not editor, though. I wasn't good enough to be editor. It was too
Oh,
competitive. Yeah, it was, the first year I was business manager, and I sold pizza ads to Beek's Pizza. And,
business
there
manager.
you go. And the second year I was deputy features editor. Not features editor, but deputy features editor, but I worked, it ended up okay. It was
So,
Yeah, it ended up
not not to date you, but when did you graduate from high school?
71.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just had my 50th, reunion.
So how come you look so much younger than I do? That's what I wanna
Boy, I tell you, it's, I don't know what it is, it's I move a lot, and it's harder for God to hit a moving target, so it's,
You know, you didn't want me to use any of this, but I kinda have to. You talked about him being the business manager of the Echo, so, I mean, I have to do that,
go
Senator.
for it. You have my permission.
Okay,
So
so let's formally introduce
go
Thomas Friedman. Is that okay?
go
Okay. We get to formally introduce New York Times columnist and three-time Pulitzer winner Tom Friedman, but more importantly, as we just said, a St. Louis Park, Minnesota graduate of 1971, and I was mistaken. The former business manager of the Echo newspaper of St. Louis Park High School, and I was also the business manager of the Echo newspaper at St. Louis Park High School.
Who'da thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? Thank you so much for being. Is it okay if I call you Tom?
You sure can, yeah, absolutely.
So before we got on, Tom, I'll tell you, Marisa said that she was the second smartest person to graduate from that high school, that you were number okay. Okay.
I did not say that. I said I was at the bottom of the list. You don't graduate from a high school that turns out Tom Friedman and the Cohen brothers and even, like, try to crack the top 10, okay?
Oh, good. So
So we
go
do
ahead.
wanna make Senator Tester a little bit sick first, Tom, because
Okay,
he gives me a lot of hell for talking a lot about Minnesota. And we listened to him talk all about Big Sandy, Montana with Jeff Ament of Pearl Jam, where they both grew up. So I want to just opine with you a little bit about St. Louis Park.
great.
And I know you've written about this, and you've written about kind of what I'll call the exceptionalism of St. Louis Park, where there's such a focus placed on education. So can you just talk a little bit about that and like why you think where we grew up is different?
Well, we grew up in a time and place, where there were 2 things that aren't present today. One is, government really worked, in Minnesota. You had these, really moderate Republicans, and really, moderate Democrats, and compromise was, expected. It was not a dirty word. Um, and at the same time, you had incredible income compression. If you looked at the houses in St. Louis Park, everyone lived in basically the same size house, and no one's parents made that much more money than anybody else. And so I went through, high school, with, sorry, grade school, junior high, high school with the same kids. Um, and there was really something called Minnesota nice, but we now know, it wasn't exactly that nice if you were Black, if you were gay, if you were trans, and so it left out a lot of people, but it also embraced a lot of people. St. Louis Park was this, incredible explosion between 2 communities that came together. Basically, the Jews of North Minneapolis, and the Swedes, and sort of Northern European descendants of St. Louis Park. And if St. Louis Park, if if Israel and America had a baby, it would be St. Louis Park. Okay, so if Israel and Sweden had a baby, excuse me, it would be St. Louis Park. And it was these really sort of pluralistic Swedes with these incredibly neurotic, education-obsessed Jews, and they kinda came together and set off an explosion of, energy that produced the Coen brothers, Michael Sandel, Norm Ornstein, Al Franken, Peggy Ornstein, Maritza, and yours truly. Uh, but it was a super moderate place. I used to tell people my dad, grew up in North Minneapolis, and with a lot of guys who were part of the Jewish mafia in North Minneapolis. They were bootleggers, and he wasn't in the mafia, but he knew these guys. And when I was very young, my dad came home, one day and said that, one of his friends had been sentenced to jail. And when you're 5 years old and your dad tells you he knows someone who went to jail, like, I never forgot that. So I said to him, "Did Dad, what did he do?" And never forgot what my dad said. It was the expression of Minnesota moderation. He said, "Well, son, he was shopping in a store before it was open." Okay, so, uh, that's Minnesota for breaking and entering. I was at a wedding, a few years ago with my friend Jay Goldberg and his wife Eileen, and Jay was telling me that Eileen had been driving the other day on Highway 100 in Minneapolis, and another driver almost drove her off the road. And Eileen came home and said to Jay, "Jay, I was so mad I almost honked." That that's Minnesota for road rage. That's
We could go.
that's sort of those are my political roots. If you wanna know why I'm a diehard centrist and moderate, it's because I of the time and place I grew up, and if my column really had an accurate name, it would be called Always Looking for Minnesota.
I know. I read some of your stuff about that, and I kinda have a final question about that.
Mm.
I mean, we could go on and on and on for sure, but Minnesota really was a great place to grow up. Let me just tell you, Senator, and we'll get to some international headlines here, but, in the Star Tribune article, this piece that they did when Tom visited our high school several years ago, it said that only 15% of St. Louis Park residents had school-age kids, but more than 70% consistently approved school referendums. So that's the kind of place that we grew up. But lots of fun memories. All right, let's get to it. Right, let's get to what's happening. Just a little bit of uh, foreign relation headlines happening right now. I was listening to one of your interviews, Tom, and you said that you've covered foreign relations since 1979 when you were a cub reporter in Beirut, just as the Iranian Revolution was happening. So, with your expertise, I'd love to just kind of zoom out and unpack what we saw over the last few days, from literally rolling out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin in Alaska to what we saw yesterday, that Oval Office meeting with Zelensky and other European leaders. Like, what's kind of your big unpacking of this as you're looking at this whole situation?
Yeah, well, um, basically, how to explain it, it's what I'm struggling to do in my column today, we we have a president, basically, I'll start at 30,000 feet, who has a good impulse. Impulse is, "Let's stop the killing." That's a good impulse, and this war is gonna have to end with a dirty deal. The only question is, will it be a good dirty deal or a bad dirty deal? You know, um, Because a bad dirty deal won't really end. Um, and that's, I think, um, Trump's strength. His weakness, in my view, is that, Trump actually does not believe in the concept of the West, a shared transatlantic alliance of shared values revolving around the rule of law, human rights, democracy, and free markets. He is not a man of the West. In that sense, he's different from any previous American president of the last century. And so he tends to look at NATO like it's actually a Trump-owned shopping center where not enough tenants are paying enough rent, you know? And he looks at the European Union as a competing shopping center, which he'd like to crush with tariffs. So, he doesn't come at this with a kinda gut core feeling of what is at stake, and therefore, he doesn't understand that when Putin says to Zelensky and Ukrainians, "Marry me or I'll kill you," they don't need a marriage counselor, okay? They need a defender, okay? This is, a geopolitical rape, in action. This is not a misunderstanding where both sides, are wrong, and so or both sides have a point. And so that's what worries me going forward. Overlaid on all of that, to your question, Maritza, I would say is this sort of bizarre scene we saw at the Oval Office, but we've seen in many others, over time. Um, I mean, Zelensky, thanked Trump 11 times in 4.5 minutes, at that meeting, as did other European leaders. And when people when our allies have to spend so much time um, thanking our president for what he's doing and not discussing what Putin is doing to Europe, that's a real problem. And these two things come together, and I'll just finish here. Why are they thanking him so effusively? It's not only because he craves that kind of dear leader adoration, um, but because deep down, they know he's actually not a man of the West. They know that he does not share a core commitment to their fate and future and to this thing we call the transatlantic alliance, which has produced more peace and prosperity than any alliance in the history of the world. They know he does not share that at the gut level. And so they are making up for it with this praise and trying to cement him and his support. But when you have to spend that much time, worrying about the American president shooting you in the back with a tweet and not Putin shooting you in the face with a missile, that leaves me extremely concerned. That's basically what's on my mind this morning.
So, Tom, I think you're right. I think the instincts that, not that I would think you were wrong, but I think you're right. I think the instincts that Trump has for peace are a good instinct that most people can say, yeah, I like that. But I think it's a bit ironic. You talked about the transatlantic alliance and how he really doesn't believe in that and how that has given us peace. Uh, that would indicate to me that if he has not, well, if he doesn't understand that or doesn't respect that, we're headed down a road that's not very good for our kids and grandkids. What's your crystal ball show as far as where this whole thing ends up? Do you think Putin is successful in reuniting the USSR because of this stuff that's going on?
I don't think it'll go that far, John, because you know, Putin's actually very weak. He's playing a weak hand. Yes, he's militarized his whole economy right now, but when you have to go out and hire North Koreans and Cubans to fight a war for you that you say is vital for your country because you're afraid to draft urban youth from Moscow and St. Petersburg because you know their mothers will revolt against you, you're not really playing a strong hand, in my view. And so what Putin has is mass. He has roughly 4 times the population of Ukraine. And so he can keep throwing this mass at Ukrainians. And just as an aside, there's a lot of talk Trump wants to win the Nobel Prize. If there Peace Prize for ending this war. If there is a Nobel Peace Prize out of this war, it goes to only one person, the Ukrainian unknown soldier, who sat in those bunkers, took those drones, did it for Ukraine, and did it for the West.
Amen to that.
Yeah, what a good point that is. I also want to ask you, Tom, about there's so many conflicts happening, right? So many things that we're watching. It's just constant, and we can't keep up. There's no way to possibly keep up with everything all at once. But as we talk about what's happening in Gaza, we're hearing that Hamas has accepted a new ceasefire proposal, which includes a path to an agreement to end the war. That's according to reporting from the New York Times. Um, and maybe you've already answered this question a little bit because of talking about your upbringing and why you're a centrist. But you've done something so effectively that seems to be so hard for others to do when talking about this conflict. And that is to be so critical of Hamas, saying that it's a terrible jihadi fascist organization that's been a curse on the Palestinian people, while also being very critical of the state of Israel and the war it's fighting. And you say that it's fighting without defining an end game. So I'm wondering if you see a path forward to bringing more people to kind of that centrist view on this, or do you think it's just too polarizing and too shrouded in controversy and politicization?
Yeah, a lot of ways I can answer that, Maritza. I was actually home in Minneapolis a few weeks ago, and my closest friends are still the people I grew up with. These are people I've known since, like, I mean,
Me too. Yeah,
yeah.
me
So,
too.
and we all had a dinner together, and they like to hear, about my world, what's going on in it, and I was sharing with them, that if you drew a cartoon or a painting of me at work, it would be me in a bunker, deep bunker, with a giant howitzer labeled New York Times column. And I fire my howitzer into the world, and then I go back into the bunker, okay? Which is to say, I I don't engage, with anybody, on either side. I love Israelis and Palestinians, but God saved me from some of their American friends who just drive me nuts, you know? And so, because they're not on the level in a lot of cases. They're about politics, not about journalism, so, um, look, I've lived this issue since I was 15, and so I know what I think, and I've never thought anything different, which is that the only effective, meaningful, and lasting solution to this conflict is, 2 states for 2 people. Um, and, when I woke up on October 8th and saw students at Harvard Yard demonstrating effectively for Hamas and condemning Israel, that that turned my stomach. I just said, "What is wrong with you?" And so the fact that Trump and many Republicans, have gone after them and now hammering Harvard, well, I don't know what the right solution is. All I know is something was really wrong in your education if you can't see that, you know. Um, and they were Hamas's useful idiots. Um, Conversely, if you can't understand that whatever was the right proportional Israeli response to that savage, indiscriminate Hamas attack on civilians, young people at a dance, babies, grandparents, whatever the right proportional response was, killing 60,000 people or thereabouts, including thousands of children, is out of proportion. Well out of proportion. And so, everything I've done, I tell people since the beginning, my approach has been, if you want a scorekeeper to tell you who's worst here, you got the wrong cowboy. I've been covering this, story as an adult journalist since 1978. I've seen these people do terrible, terrible things to one another over the years. I'm focused on one thing: how do we end it? How do we get out of it? And that brings me back to where I started. The only solution is 2 states for 2 people. Now, in fairness to Israel, Israel's offered that to the Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, and they turned it down, at different points along the way. And, so, like, when Israel was ready, they weren't ready. Now we have a situation where they may be more ready, but Israel's now run by people who aren't ready, in part because of what's happened in the past, in part because they embrace an ideology of Jewish supremacy, that simply can't countenance 2 states. And so I'm not sure, how we get out of this. The one thing I would say, though, Ritz, is this, that, I do believe that this has been such a searing experience for both sides. Um, uh, and basically a recreation of the 1948 war, which was a disaster for Palestinians, that I am not convinced that with the right diplomacy, with the right, imagination, that when the war is over, when the hostages are returned, I do believe you'll see some fresh thinking in Israel. I do believe you'll see a generation of fresh leadership. And the reason I believe that if and when there's another Israeli election, that will happen, is because the greatest political analyst in Israel has told me so. And his name is Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's why he doesn't want another election, because he knows that he has a date with destiny. And that's why he's been prolonging everything. So when Netanyahu tells you he doesn't want another election, there's a reason for that. And it's because he, at some level, understands that once the hostages are released and returned, um, it's gonna be an explosion in Israeli politics. I can't tell you when or how or whatever, but exactly, but, um, it's gonna unlock a lot of energy that's been pent up. And, when that happens, we, the United States, need to be there, with our energy and creative ideas. Unfortunately, our ambassador there, um, uh, Mike Huckabee, has completely confused his role. He actually serves as the ambassador from the Israeli settler community to the United States, not the American ambassador to the state of Israel. And I'm just hoping that Trump will be able to see beyond such a knucklehead and find his way, as he had with the Abraham Accords, to back to some kind of creative diplomacy. We're a long way from that, but that's my hope.
Do you see this explosion after Netanyahu resulting in a stronger democracy in Israel?
John, it's very hard to tell because right now you have to understand Israel is to American politics what off Broadway is to Broadway. Everything happens there first and in miniature. So what's going on off Broadway? Well, Netanyahu's been trying to what? Crush the Supreme Court, basically, to remove its control over the political apparatus of government. And he's in the process of trying to fire the attorney general. Gosh, where have you heard that before? You know? And so the same effort by a certain political faction to weaken the rule of law, so a supremacist vision can be implemented, is going on there as the struggle is going on here. And that's why I watch that struggle in Israel, because it can be a model, a precursor, or a warning, for what's going on here.
Oh, I was talking to Senator Tester, and I told him that I'm on the jury for the Cronkite Award. So I've been watching all of these entries over submitted over the past year, and you forget everything that has been happening if we're sticking to the topic of democracy.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to be distracted by the news of the day and what's happening this week and the big shocking things. I mean, January 6th is one of them that right, we've since then continuously been talking about this. But, you wrote recently about the firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner as the most dangerous move yet. And for people who say, "Yeah, that's bad, but what about January 6th? What about this?" I was wondering if you could lay out your case on that and why you came to that conclusion.
Well, Maritza, if you think about what Trump has introduced, I would say they fall into three buckets. One is changes in policy. Okay, he wants to seal the border in a way that Joe Biden did not do effectively. One reason he got elected, all power to him. Um, he has a different view on taxes, different view than I would, or whatever. Those are legitimate politics. Sorry, elections have consequences, and those are natural political consequences of this election. Where he has completely gone off the rails, in my view, has to do with people and institutions. He has appointed people to jobs who are utterly unqualified for these positions, and no previous American president would have ever appointed them. Robert F. Kennedy, basically a quack, amateur doctor as head of Health and Human Services. Tulsi Gabbard, a complete conspiracy nut, and Putin fangirl as head of the Director of National Intelligence. um, uh, the leadership at the FBI. These are people who aren't. Elon Musk wouldn't have hired one of them to be a salesman on his showroom floor at Tesla, let alone to run these kinds of institutions. At the same time, he has fired people like the director of the NSA. I'm sure not many Montanans have followed this, not many Minnesotans have followed it. But the director of our national security agency, our top cyber warrior, and his deputy, Tim Ho, were fired by Trump with no warning, while he was abroad on a trip to Japan on the advice and urging of a basically political witch doctor, a conspiracy theorist named Laura Loomer. So, so when you basically do things like that, you're in a whole different area that we have never been to before. And then when you destroy institutions like AID, the Agency for International Development, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics by removing, because of 1 month's data, the independent director and replacing him or nominating as his replacement a complete political economic hack partisan who got his economic PhD from a Matchbox University. Well, you're really playing with the crown jewels because our institutions are what distinguishes us. What would Chinese give for 1 day of our Bureau of Labor Statistics? What would Russians give for 1 day of our FBI? Okay. These are the things that make us the envy of the world. And when you play around with those, you're really playing around with the crown jewels. And that's why I wrote that column, that if this is going on after 6 months, 4 years of this, and I'm not sure what will be left.
Won't be much left.
Yeah.
Tom, where are we headed? And look, I could back up. I've talked a lot on these podcasts about how
Yeah.
Congress is AWOL. About one of their jobs was to make sure that people like Tulsi Gabbard and the rest don't get confirmed, but they obviously decided that since Trump was elected president, like all other presidents before him, that he could have anybody he wanted in those positions. So where are we headed? Are we, um, I mean, I stick my head in a combine and I don't turn on the radio. I just look at wheat going into the
Hmm.
header all day long. And the reason for that is because if I start thinking about how this democracy's been dismantled before my eyes and how Congress doesn't do a fucking thing about it, sorry
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
French, it's the way it
Yeah.
is, it drives me insane. So where are we headed?
Well, it's a good question, John, and I'm asking myself the same thing. Because this I have a friend from Zimbabwe, named Leslie Goldwasser, and I've quoted Leslie before because she grew up in a small town, Bulawayo, in Zimbabwe, then emigrated to America and became very successful in business on Wall Street. And Leslie said to me one day, you Americans kick around your country like it's a football, but it's not a football. It's a Fabergé egg. You can drop it and you can break it. And I saw that happen in Lebanon. Um, I saw politicians who thought they can just hack away at the system and be hyper partisan. And yeah, when they get in power, they'll be a little more responsible. Then one day they hacked one time too far and it fell apart. And it's been next to impossible to get back together again. Now, Lord knows, I have my issues with Democrats. If I were to describe my politics, I'm a pro-business, pro-trade, pro-globalization Democrat. There are like 3 of me left in the zoo, okay? Um, and, uh, and so, like, I'm not, like, good with this whole progressive, wing of the party and the stuff they believe in, democratic socialism. Socialism was a great system for making people equally poor. Okay. Capitalism is a system that makes people unequally rich, but that's why you have government to level things out. So I have a real problem with where that, you know, wing of the party is taking us, but I have a much bigger problem with the fact that you cannot have a stable two-party democracy if one party completely surrenders its role of advice and consent and to serve as an equal branch of government. And so we have this situation now, John, which I don't have to tell you, where there's no Republican Party now. It's completely surrendered itself to the president. The sort of conservative press, other than the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, God bless them, has completely surrendered itself to the president. And we have a president who is a complete norm breaker, that things we thought that were laws were actually norms. And once he broke them, they're gone. And so there's like nothing between Trump and his whatever fantasy he wakes up with the next morning. The central truth of Trump 2 is that Trump 1 was surrounded by buffers and Trump 2 is surrounded by amplifiers, bobbleheads at every level, in Congress, in the media, in the business community. And that's super dangerous. And so, you know, uh, this may be my last rodeo. I don't know. I'm 72. Um, but all I can tell you is this is the fight of my life here and in Israel. And I am in that fight and I am not fucking tired. So that's where I stand. And that's all I can say.
As we talk about the erosions, Tom, I mean, I share the same fears about journalism. I mean, I see it every day. I just read that Nexstar is buying Tegna, so more media consolidation, less independent journalism. And we talk about the erosions here. And one of my very, very smart friends in news said about the capitulation that we're seeing. He said, no one wants to be the boy who cried wolf, even though the wolf has already torn through about 30% of the sheep and there's blood everywhere. And so yeah, pretty good. That
Yeah.
leads me to my very direct question that a viewer sent me. And they wanted me to ask you, when do we start admitting that we live in a dictatorship?
It's a disturbing and perfectly legitimate question. I don't think we are there yet. I think a lot will depend on the midterms and whether the other party, the Democratic Party, can recover at least one branch of government. But I guess, Maritza, what disturbs me and what I find just completely incomprehensible is the behavior of Republican lawmakers. Um, in this sense, I actually don't know anyone in my life personally who behaves in that craven affection fashion. Um, I ask myself, these people must not have mirrors, wives, or daughters. Because if I behaved that cravenly as as Senator Tester's former Republican colleagues now behave, I couldn't look in the mirror. My wife would have thrown my mattress and golf clubs out the window and down the driveway, and my two daughters would not talk to me. So I don't get what goes on in their house. I don't get how they don't come home and their spouse and daughters or sons say to them, Dad, Mom, that was really icky, you know? And, maybe John can tell me what goes on there, but I don't get it. I don't get how not one of them wouldn't see that there's
I don't
a future in actually standing up and that if you can't afford to give up 180 grand in free parking in National Airport, to defend the Constitution, then we really are in trouble.
Yeah, I don't get it. I've been talking about the good people that I served with on the other side of the aisle, and people go, they're not good people because they're allowing this shit to happen, and that's a
Yeah.
fair argument. But I will tell you that my wife would do the same thing. I came home and did that kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, she kicked my ass for doing good things. No, and that's a fact, and I don't get it. I've heard people I served with say this is the best job I've ever had. Look, this U.S. Senate job is a great job because you get to
Yeah.
represent great people and you get to affect change in a way that you can't anywhere else. But it ain't the best job I've ever had. It's a pain in the ass,
Interesting. Interesting.
and these guys and gals act like it's the end of the world if they don't do what Trump tells them to do, and it isn't the end of the world. In fact, that's what they were elected to do. I don't know. I could go on all day.
Yeah.
It drives me up a wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me.
I didn't know about the free parking though. So
I never took advantage of that. Now I knew there's a Benny I didn't know about. Damn it. No, just right now. Unbelievable. Hey, I've got to ask you one question that I should have picked up, a half hour ago. When you talked about how Trump viewed NATO and how he viewed the EU as being how does he view Russia and China?
Yeah, well, I think the problem is that I think he views Russia and, let's say, Putin for starters. Like, Trump believes in things that are big and things that are strong. Those are his core values. And, like, the other day, he was talking about Russia. He said, it's so big, it has 11 time zones. Wow, that's big, you know. And then the other day he said how strong they are, how strong they are. Well, if you're so strong, how is it you couldn't defeat Ukraine, a country a quarter of your size, you know, after 3 years of war? So I just think, Trump's a different kettle of fish, and he's unlike any previous president. To give him his due, he's often been, I would say, the wrong answer to the right question. He's touched on some things that clearly were bothering a lot of Americans, some of them ugly things, some of them very legitimate things. And you have to give him his due for that. He's been elected twice. And At the same time, I think he's got some really different ideas rattling around in his head, different from any other American president. And now that he's in power with no buffers, we're seeing them played out in the world. And here's why those no buffers matter, John. So in Trump 1, Trump would have gone to the Mar-a-Lago bar one afternoon. Guy would have sidled up to him and said, Mr. President, I've got an idea for Gaza. You should get rid of all the Palestinians there and turn it into a Club Med. It's got a beautiful beach. Trump would have come into the Oval Office the next day, sat down with John Kelly, and said, John, I think we should turn Gaza into a Club Med. It's got a beautiful beach. Just get rid of all the Palestinians. And his chief of staff, John Kelly, would have said, Mr. President, what a brilliant idea. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah, I mean, but let's study that. I'm gonna call Mattis, whatever. We're gonna study that. Shoot, the whole thing got diverted. Yeah, I mean, fast forward, he would have come into the Oval Office and said, you know what, Zelensky's coming to visit, and I'm gonna beat the shit out of him for not saying thank you to me enough. I'm gonna say he started the war and that he's a dictator. And by the way, he shows no respect for the Oval Office because he doesn't wear a suit and tie. And Vice President Pence would have said to him, Mr. President, that boy, I so know where you're coming from. But let me on this one, let me take the lead and let's try that in private, next time. What happened now, because there's no buffers, only amplifiers, he goes into the Oval Office and says, let's turn Gaza into Club Med. He goes into the Oval Office and his vice president joins him in beating up on an incredibly heroic leader, who has stood up to Russia and defended the West. Okay. No buffers. Now you can think that, it's just one thing. What the hell? No, look what's going on in Israel. Netanyahu has said, when people say to him, you have no plan for the morning after? He said, what do you mean I have no plan for the morning? My plan is the Trump plan. My plan is the Trump. He heard what the president said. He's now acting on it. And when Putin saw what he did to Zelensky, that only encouraged him. So words actually matter.
Yeah,
And this notion that you can just bullshit every day and every new day is a new day. And there's no such thing as the Google machine where people can go look and see what you said yesterday. That has real consequences today.
I know we were running out of time here, but I just want to end kind of on a hopeful note, Tom. And this is kind of a two-part question, but what do you say to people who ask how they can stay optimistic? And how do you stay grounded, knowing everything you know and all the things that keep so many of us up at night?
Drugs. I use a lot of drugs. No, don't. It's a joke. Don't tweet that. I don't use any drugs.
We all do. We all do.
Um, I tell you, Rich, I fall back on two things. I told this story the other day. My lecture agent came to me like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and and said, it was 9 months ago, and said, you have a speaking offer to speak at Pittsburgh State University. And I do a kind of standard talk on the state of the world, whatever's going on. I said, fine, sign them up. Good, all good. Anyways, 9 months later, the date came around. The week before, I was traveling to the Middle East. In fact, I came home the day before the lecture. I'm exhausted like crazy, but no problem. I'm just going to Pittsburgh, and I live in Washington. And my agent calls me with the travel details, and he says, no, no, it's Pittsburgh without an H. Where is Pittsburgh without an H? I ask him. He says, it's in southern Kansas. I said, you've got to be kidding. How do I get to Pittsburgh without an H? He said, well, you have to fly to Chicago and then to Springfield, Missouri, and then take a 3-hour car drive to Pittsburgh without an H. And I just thought, oh my God, you have got to be kidding.
Welcome to Montana.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, hi.
we have a Manhattan, Montana.
So I go to do this, get to Pittsburgh without an H, and it's at the heart of red Trump country, but the university is a lovely place. Its president is the brother of the former CEO of Walmart. And he endowed the lecture series, and someone I know, and wanted me to give the lecture. And I so enjoyed meeting with the students there, and the faculty and the people from the community. And after I gave my talk, I was questioned by I think it was the university president. We did a Q&A. And at one point, I forgot exactly what it was in response to. I said to him, Donald Trump says his favorite word is tariffs. My favorite word is actually public. Public spaces, public libraries, public television, public parks, public goods, public health, public transportation. And I got the loudest ovation I got the whole night in response to that from the good people of Pittsburgh without an H. And what that tells me is that out in the country, people don't like this. Yeah, there's this media on both sides that feed off it and enlarge it, echo it, but I don't think people like this. And I think they are looking for a president, still looking for a president, and would respond to a president who brings us together and rules by addition and not by division.
You are 100% correct, and that's what, and that's the positive. Here's what frustrates me: South Dakota, South Dakota ain't that much different from Montana.
Yeah.
John Thune's the leader of the Republican caucus in the United States Senate. John Thune, I actually like the dude. He got me defeated, but I still like the dude. Okay.
Yeah.
Why the hell is John Thune doing this stuff? He knows better than that.
He knows better. They all know better. And that's what I can't find, that if you can't summon the courage to do the right thing, which you actually have a constituency of voters to do, because you're worried about being hammered by Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson, then just go home. Just
do the right thing
Well,
first. Do the right thing. If it costs you your seat, you can lay in bed at night and say, God damn it, I did the right thing.
And that's Liz Cheney, it's you, John, it's others, and at the end of the day, I think that will still win out. But right now, we're not in a good place.
the other takeaway from that story, though, is that we need to invite Tom Friedman to come speak at the University of Montana.
Okay.
We have an airport and everything, just one connection from DCA, okay?
Who was governor when Eric Stern, David Stern's son, was chief of staff?
Schweitzer. Brian Schweitzer.
Yeah, Brian, yeah. I never forget. I actually went out to Montana to look at energy projects.
Yeah.
I never forget, Brian, we used the governor's prop plane to go somewhere, and we got on the plane and we sat down, and he said, Tom, I just have to tell you, we allowed the interns to fly today.
Perfect. What could go wrong?
I figured he'd tell you that the planes hadn't been serviced for 5,000 hours. So, hey.
It was very funny. Very funny.
Oh, well, we would love to have you out, and I wanna thank you so much, and our friend who wishes to remain unnamed, our St. Louis Park friend who helped connect us here today, we thank him for facilitating this, and thank you so much, Tom, for your time and your expertise. It's just been lovely.
It's a
Uh,
pleasure. Happy to do it again with both of you.
yeah, well, hey, man, you stay well and keep writing good columns and shooting those missiles. And
Wi
thank you
will
very much.
will do. Thanks so much.
Whew.
You know, the dude is smart and he's got great perspective. I mean, I got to tell you what, while he's putting the pieces of information together, I'm sitting here going, man, that's somebody's brain right there, man. I mean, I'm telling you, it
It's
make
incredible.
it makes me think that I don't reflect enough personally. I mean, I'm always pushing forward, and never take time to reflect about what's going on to try to determine where the future heads, because the past dictates the future. And he's pretty impressive, man. He's pretty impressive, dude. I don't know what to say. I don't know that I've ever been involved with an interview personally, or even with a person that has that level of ability to think and think critically. It's pretty amazing. I would call it intellect, but I think it's bigger than that.
Bigger than that. I know. I have so many, I take notes as we go. I have so many notes of things like, wow. I mean, when talking about not needing a marriage counselor for Ukraine and Russia, I mean, he speaks so in terms that we can all understand. And yeah, the reflection, it's unbelievable. Like I said at the beginning, I'm very intellectually intimidated by Tom Friedman, but we are so grateful for his time.
I wish he'd run for office. God damn.
That was in my question list. And we didn't get to it because he had to go, but I do wanna ask him, like, "Have you ever thought about running for office?" But he is 72.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's gonna say, "Hell no." I mean, he's got a perfectly good life. Why would he wanna screw that up? But I mean, he needs to be an advisor to somebody, because I think he's got a good thought process, and I think he thinks things through pretty damn well. Maybe it's because his politics are lined up more closely with mine, but, it's pretty interesting. Anyway, it was good
Yeah, okay.
having you on.
Let's,
I'm ready to talk about your next podcast as you push me out of the road and tell me that you can handle. You don't need
well, no, I want you there. You're
search
the one who said
firm
you
firm or
said you're busy.
buttering up the the podcast.
Let me ask you about your hat first, though,
Yeah,
because
what do you think it is? What's it say, Maritza? Say.
you brought back an old favorite of mine. It says, "M son."
And so and your last response was, "What's M-Son?"
What? Okay, I know now. Montana State University Northern, but oh my goodness, I can't think of the mascot now.
Well,
I don't know.
it's kind of a weird mascot because it's a thing. It's the Northern Lights, okay?
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. So
I
it's
really like that. Do you see the northern lights from the farm?
oh, shit, yes. Yeah, yeah. It's almost like Minnesota, you know? What can I say? Yes, you see Northern Lights from the farm, just like you do in Minnesota and North Dakota and all across the northern tier. Uh, but yeah. So I thought I'd bring it back just to see if your mind was still functional.
Well, it's not, but I also figure you brought it back because your grandson is playing football there now.
Yeah, hopefully he sees some playing time. I mean, that's what I'm
Okay.
you know, I don't know if, uh, if Coach Sowers watches these podcasts, but Coach Sowers, he's a good kid. He'll make a difference. Get him out there and let him hit some people. He'll do it. All right.
All right. You
But
heard it. Okay.
but he's my
So
grandkid, okay? So very seldom can they do anything wrong.
yeah, that's true. That's good. That's a good endorsement. Okay, so Thursday we have the founder and CEO of Vote Mama coming on. This is an organization that helps elect women across the country, trying to get more working moms actually into office. Here's the deal. Senator Tester is very much invited to be on this podcast. I think it would be very beneficial, but he is in the middle of harvest. So if you find that it rains,
You're gonna get me in trouble with all the women, okay? So you know. They're gonna say, "Oh, you do it, but it's a woman." No, that's not it. Truthfully, Yeah, I gotta get harvest.
Well, if it
It's
rains
I can see a
and you
light
can
at the end of the tunnel, and if it rains, which I hope it doesn't, by the way, then I'll be on. So,
okay, so we're gonna talk, about women in politics. I have so many questions. We will miss our favorite seven-fingered dirt farmer, but I hope you will still tune in for this discussion on Thursday. Thank you for joining us today. Again, thank you so much to Tom Friedman, our guest, New York Times columnist and St. Louis Park graduate.
just for full disclosure, my grandmother, my mother, and my wife are my biggest influences in politics, and it started when I was a little kid with my grandmother and has gone all the way through. And I was telling the truth when I said my wife would kick my ass if I did things that people, because she kicked my ass when I did things that I thought were really, really good that weren't bad, but that's it. With that, have a great podcast with Vote Mama. And what's the name of the woman who's going to be on?
Oh, Yuba Gretchen Shirley.
Where's she? Is
That's
she from Minnesota too?
No, I can't. Oh, she ran for office. You're gonna put me on the spot. I'm not gonna guess because I will get it wrong, but she ran for office. And yeah, she's very, very smart. So we will have a good discussion. You can find us, of course, Substack, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube. Shoot us an email, groundedpcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you to Pearl Jam for letting us use their music. And that's it. That's it. We'll chat again soon. Bye bye.